Almost everyone has heard the title 1984, but strangely, not that many people have actually read it. George Orwell wrote 1984 around 1948. The story is set in 1984. So yes, he imagined the world decades into the future. That alone is pretty impressive. But here's a more uncomfortable question. What if in 2026, 1984 feels more accurate now than it did back then? Should we be amazed by Orwell's imagination? Or should we be worried about our reality? If we're not careful, 1984 doesn't stay a novel. It turns into a warning we ignored. After the Cold War, democracy felt like the clear winner. Game over. We won, they said. But maybe in fighting dictatorships, democracy left behind some dangerous seeds. Seeds you don't notice at first, seeds that grow quietly. Until one day, they're no longer someone else's problem, they're our problem. And that's how I want to read 1984 today. Despair, hope. Despair, hope. But first, a very short plot summary. Alright, so the story, quickly. 1984 takes place in a totalitarian state called Oceania. The main character, Winston, works at the Ministry of Truth. His job? Rewrite the past so that the party is always right. He secretly keeps a diary. He falls in love with Julia, and he believes an inner party member, O'Brien, is part of the resistance. But he's wrong. It's a trap. They're arrested. Winston is tortured. He betrays Julia. In the end, he returns to society with no love, no independent thought, and realizes he now loves the party. That's how the story ends. Now, let's read this as despair, hope, despair, hope. Now, despair number one, a system that manages thought. The first despair is this. The party doesn't just lock people up. It changes the conditions of thinking itself. There's a famous slogan. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. The party edits history. Losses become victories. Failures become successes. Enemies become lifelong allies. Well, at least on paper. Here's the key point. We believe we choose freely, but choice depends on memory. And if memory is written by power, choice becomes easy to guide. So, ask yourself this question. Are your choices based on accurate memory? Second, language. The party removes words, simplifies them, deletes them. Languages shapes thought. If you can't say something, it's hard to keep thinking it. And more importantly, if people can't name ideas, they can't unite around them. So ask this. Does the language I use help connect or isolate with people? Third, anger. The party manages anger through the 2 minutes hate rule. People scream, rage, and feel relieved. But what if anger is carefully redirected, not toward power, but toward the weak? Now, that doesn't feel unfamiliar, does it? Today, fake news distorts memory. Social media chooses what we get angry at. And sometimes, that anger flows downward instead of upward. Words like collateral damage, terrorist, security, justice. Chosen words shape thought. And before we know it, we're trapped inside that frame. So ask yourself this. Is your anger actually pointing at the real cause? Now, that's the first despair. A system that controls how we think. Now, on to hope number 1. Control can't fully defeat emotion. But Orwell gives us hope too. Winston and Julia reach truth through emotion, through writing, through love. There's a line that I really love in the book. When you love someone, the problems of the state become visible. Love pulls us back into reality. When you care deeply about someone, you start asking, is this world actually okay? Emotion makes us vulnerable, but at the same time, it also gives us courage. The courage to see the truth and to call lies what they are. That's the first hope. Emotion is hard to control. Despair number 2. Overwhelming violence turns people into objects. Then comes the colder despair. Love collapses under overwhelming violence. Violence doesn't break people just because it hurts. It breaks them because it seals the ability to think. Under extreme fear and pain, humans stop reasoning. They just react, almost like objects. And that's why Winston breaks in room 101. That's why he betrays Julia. We may not live in a world of torture chambers like the novel, but we know other kinds of violence. For example, the fear of losing your job, the fear of social isolation, the fear that one sentence that you slip out could destroy your life. Fear doesn't need to scream. It just needs to work quietly. And submission often looks like this, not thinking at all. That's the second despair. Violence turns humans into things. So ask yourself, what fear controls you? And are you already surrendering to it? Hope number 2. Emotion never fully disappears. Now, so is that the end? Orwell leaves us with an uncomfortable conclusion. But we can still pull out one more possibility of hope. One thing he couldn't fully predict. Technology. Now, as we all know, technology is a double-edged sword. It strengthens surveillance. It spreads propaganda. But it also lets people speak, connect, share emotion. Some try to rewrite history. Others expose a lie. Some design anger. Others spread empathy. And above all, uncensored stories, movies, music, novels. They remind us that we are still human. Emotion doesn't vanish. Love doesn't disappear. That's why I believe this. What ultimately saves us from oppression is emotion, love, and connection. Now to conclude, today we read 1984 in the following steps. Despair, hope, despair, hope. The first despair, power doesn't just control bodies, it designs memory, language, and anger. The second despair, violence doesn't just hurt, it erases the ability to think, turning people into objects. And yet, hope remains. Emotion can't be fully controlled, and love makes the world visible. And technology, not by itself, but through expression and connection, keeps human truth alive. So, the final question is this. What choices are you making today? Where does your memory come from? Do your words expand your thinking or shrink it? Is your anger aimed at the real cause? And most importantly, do you still have love and empathy in your life? As long as we keep these questions alive, 1984 stays just a warning. and not a prophecy. So let me ask you, when was the last moment you thought, wow, this feels like 1984? Leave one example in the comments, and we'll continue the conversation in our next video.